Hi. Our journey, or the next stage of our journey, takes us to Ramanujan and Ramanujan's work in mathematics. Ramanujan's story is very beautiful, it's very interesting, and it's kind of a sad story. It's a story about mathematics, intuition, mentorship, institutions, inspiration. You might even call it divine inspiration at times, and genius. And so, in these three, 4 sections, I will talk about different aspects of Ramanujan's amazing work and what it can mean to us, what we can learn from it, and what is really beautiful and stands out in this journey. So Ramanujan is one of the world's most acclaimed mathematicians or most accomplished mathematicians. And here the question would be, what does it mean, achievement in math? This will be something we will think about, but particularly we'll reflect on the beauty of math also as we go, math as a knowledge discipline. So Ramanujan is one of the most accomplished mathematicians in the world right now, highly revered. Um, Although he had a very difficult life, he came from poverty, isolation, he battled with sickness, with difference, with personal difference, and he faced it all with a lot of grace, with spirituality and beautiful dedication to his work and to what he saw as his mission in life. Um, we will talk about him, about his journey from India to Cambridge, and his journey from intuition to theory and visions and dreams to writing research papers. Um, but also, as we do that, we will reflect on him as a person, um, with specific focus placed on this amazing intuition that Ramanujan had. And you've probably seen some of the memes, maybe not, uh, about how the divine or different truths were being revealed to him about the universe by the universe. So, as we do this, we will look at the insights contained in the story about intuition, work, genius, and scientific progress in general. And we will analyze the story, or we will look at the story from the regular 3 lenses that I've discussed in the Atlas of Worldly Wisdom. So, knowledge awareness is the first, intent and vision, and finally, creativeness and work, and how this work comes to be and to be regarded as highly influential, important, and great work. This series isn't really oriented at documenting the lives of these amazing people or these geniuses, but rather, as we talk about their lives, as we talk about their achievements, we learn things about the world, about creativeness, about great work. And this is what I intend to do today. So, in talking about Ramanujan and Ramanujan's work, I will talk about mathematics, intuition, and other components of making work memorable, great, and effective. So, first, I would like to start with mathematics. Ramanujan had this huge passion for mathematics, and mathematics itself is a very beautiful field of knowledge. I am frequently annoyed or surprised when I hear young people say that they don't understand math, or they hate math, or they don't know how to interact with math. Mathematics is really beautiful, it's really fascinating. If you think about it, mathematics is like this other world, this conceptual layer that is above the world, right? It reveals elegant patterns and connections in seemingly unrelated things around us. And it combines logical precision with creative insight. Mathematics is about searching for concepts, for universal truths that are independent of the physical implementations or the physical realities. They are based sometimes on the physical realities, and we conclude higher order abstractions from them. Mathematics is kind of a harmony between simplicity and complexity, and this is what many people see when they see something as mathematically elegant. So there is this complexity that is described in simple and beautiful terms, and sometimes it discovers unexpected relationships, and so it reveals the beauty of the world if you want to really dig deep in it. This abstraction of mathematics is very interesting because it deals with pure concepts. And these are things that are not in reality. Humans, when we interact with math, we are actually trying to transcend reality, exist independently of physical reality and think beyond it. Look at beautiful patterns and relationships that are purely conceptual and that lead to models that can be applied in different situations. So mathematics has all this inherent beauty in it. And here, Ramanujan's story reflects this beauty of math. So mathematics as a knowledge field is all of this. And it enabled Ramanujan to reflect all the components that we talk about in the awareness, intent, creativeness matrix through math, because awareness is about truth, intent is about good, creativeness is about beauty. And we see all these three elements for Ramanujan reflected in math. He talks about math as an exploration of eternal truths. He has a saying that goes, the discovery of a formula brings joy, not because it solves a problem, but because it reveals an eternal truth. Math is about this quest for eternal truths, for conceptual truths, pure truth. And then when we talk about beauty, Ramanujan and many others see mathematics as this manifestation of pure beauty. And he says, I am certain that my discoveries will help the world see the beauty in numbers. And then when we talk about goodness, goodness is about progress, is about having a mission in life, is about creating meaning for yourself and for others. And again, Ramanujan saw math as his tool for revealing these beautiful truths to the world for the benefit of the world, for the benefit of helping all these others. So all the components of the triple helix are reflected in Ramanujan's view of math and in math's beautiful capacity to reflect truth, beauty, and goodness. So in extending this, I would like to add a few observations about knowledge, about Ramanujan's knowledge in particular. Ramanujan was obsessive about math from a very young age. He used to love math, solve a lot of math problems, and he even reached a stage where he neglected all his other studies, failed some English test or something, and lost a scholarship because of his obsession with math. Right. So there is this deep sense of passion for this kind of knowledge here. Ramanujan, when at a young age discovered a certain math book, I have the title here somewhere. And when he discovered this book influenced him a lot. And this reminds us of the story of Einstein, where he had this geometry book that changed his thinking. We always have these artifacts at a young age. Yeah, here it is. A synopsis of elementary results in pure mathematics. So he discovered this book, which had formulas without many times without proofs. And so he obsessively started reading, going through these formulas, trying to reflect on them, solve them, find proofs himself. And this affected his passion for math. This self-education, because Ramanujan was mostly self-educated, he didn't have a proper formal training in math. So he self-educated. And here we raise the question, which we will see in the coming section. He had this amazing sense of mathematical intuition. And could it be that his self-training, his lack of formal training, was one of the factors helped him acquire and get this intuition? Because, we say this sometimes, that formal training sometimes kills our sense of beauty, kills our sense of intuition. This rigid scholastic educational system sometimes kills the creativity out of people. And we saw this with our discussion on Einstein. There are many other notable geniuses who have had a similar observation in which the educational system was stifling their sense of creativity. So here we can ask the question, could it be that this lack of formal training was one of the reasons for Ramanujan's amazing creativity in mathematics? Another couple of observations. It seems there is this interesting story where Hardy, who's Ramanujan's mentor, once was visiting him in the hospital, and he said, when he got to his room, he said, well, I came in a taxi which had a very unremarkable number. It was 1729, and I remembered it because it was so unremarkable. But then Ramanujan immediately answered him and said, That's not an unremarkable number. It's the smallest number that can be written as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. This small story, some people say it shows his amazing ability to calculate, but I don't think that. I think that he had a mental database of numbers, of formulas in his mind. And this comes from obsessive solving and reflecting on these issues. These numbers were his life. And so he had this huge database always present in his mind. And so the number just came up, its significance. And here we can relate that to Ramanujan's notebooks, right? These are an important part of his story. He was always scribbling mathematical formulas, proofs, trying to think about them. And there were three, and then a fourth one was discovered after he died. And these notebooks were a renewed source of inspiration for many mathematicians thinking about many formulas and theorems. All of these observations on knowledge also carry lessons for us. Being obsessed, finding the thing that we can obsess about, to study it very well, to see the beauty of the world from it. And once you do that, once you internalize it really deeply, you can reach a stage of beautiful intuition where you just start seeing the truths. And this is what we will discuss in the next section. The next important and beautiful component of this story of Ramanujan is about intuition. Intuition is about an instinctive ability to grasp or understand a truth or come up with a result immediately without deliberate analysis and justification. It is like a magical ability that some people have. And definitely Ramanujan had a lot of intuition. Ramanujan could frequently arrive at mathematical results, mathematical answers, without much derivation. The 1729 example that I just mentioned is one of them. He frequently used to say that these answers were given to me. Somebody would ask him, "Where do you get this equation from?" And he would say, "It was revealed to me in a dream, or the universe gave it to me, or it just came." And in this sense, he is the bridge, right? He, as intent is the bridge between the abstract and the concrete, Ramanujan is the bridge between the universe and delivering this knowledge to people. He felt himself to be so. One of these examples is the formula for pi, which is still being used to this day to calculate more precise values. Now, Ramanujan used to see these truths, these intuitive truths. He would come to these answers, and he would sometimes attribute it to the divine. He would say that the goddess Namagiri revealed these truths to me. And this is interesting. He is saying that the truth is external. The idea is out there. It just passes by me, and I'm the prism. I'm the screen in which this idea is reflected. It is interesting that the goddess is his local area goddess, and she's the goddess of the place. And one might reflect, because he left India to Cambridge and he was homesick and isolated. And does this reflect a deeper psychological attachment to his home, a deeper longing, or kind of a way of expressing his isolation and his loneliness? So this is very interesting to look at. He would see these truths, maybe also partly because of his obsession or because of his creative approach, personal approach, subjective approach to mathematics, which we talked about a little bit. It is also interesting that this goddess is revealing the truth to him. And here we look at the role of faith. As we said, Ramanujan had a very difficult life. He lived in poverty. He lived in isolation when he moved to the United Kingdom. And so he had all these difficulties. And how do we face difficulties? Sometimes we need faith, right? We need this bigger picture justification to be able to go through our suffering or through our difficulties. And this sense of sacrifice, this sense of mission. Okay, all this being mentioned, and as I said, we are using the opportunity of talking about these great people to reflect on some deep concepts. And I would like to talk a little bit about intuition here. So if intuition is this ability to grasp truths immediately, right, without much derivation, which happened to Ramanujan, intuition is fast, right? It's characterized by quick decision making. It's holistic. It sees the big picture, and it has an emotional component. There is always part of the self reflected in these intuitive choices. It is kind of unconscious. It reflects unconscious processing. Remember that Ramanujan said, these truths came to me in a dream, or I don't know how, they were just given to me. And intuition frequently is about observing patterns and seeing how the universe is working. It is based on expertise, right? It is based on experience in a certain field, spending time in a certain field, being invested in a certain field. And this is why it is highly context dependent. So can we develop this sense of intuition, this miraculous sense? Well, yes, it depends on a certain set of circumstances. Many successful individuals or geniuses are said to have this great sense of intuition, right? The examples include Einstein, which we talked about, Ramanujan, which we talked about here. Some people say that Steve Jobs probably had a great sense of intuition. Many great investors, Warren Buffett, for example. You can see in all these cases that the intuition is a reflection of a sense of obsession, a sense of integration between the individual and the field in which they work in. So intuition can be improved, can be developed by being mindful, by reflecting on past decisions, and sometimes by having a quick feedback loop. And this takes us to deliberate practice and how many peak performers, as we talk about in the Atlas of Worldly Wisdom, develop this kind of great work or excellent performance by relying on mentorships, on mentors and mentorships that create quick feedback loops. You can develop intuition by obsessing about something, thinking about it a lot, so that it fills your conscious mind and it spills into the unconscious. Even when you sleep, you will be working on the same problem. Intuition depends on a keen sense of observation, of looking at the details, reflecting on what they mean, and then applying analysis to understand how these things are. So you break down the parts, you internalize it, and it becomes part of you so that later you can create these truths. Intuition depends on embracing uncertainty. Right? There is always a sense of uncertainty here. And even in Ramanujan's case, there were some times that he would just see certain results that would turn out to be wrong a couple of times. So he used to arrive at some of these results without proof, and some of them would need a little bit of nudging in one direction or the other because they wouldn't be accurate. So it has this sense of uncertainty built into it. And of course, experience. So deep experiences, diverse experiences lead to the development of this sense of intuition, the particularly domain experience. So this is the domain that you have chosen, or as in Ramanujan's case, the domain that has chosen you: self-awareness, pattern recognition training, and emotional intelligence and development. So the ability to integrate, as we said. Subjectively, I think it is kind of personal, the thing that you can develop intuition in. This is something that you personally love, that you've personally spent a lot of time in. I used to think that in geometry, in probability, in number theory, there are amazing chances to apply intuition, because I would lose myself in a problem for days sometimes. And then you would see certain formulas, or as we mentioned, certain elegant relationships emerging. So this concludes the discussion on intuition, on divine intuition, as in Ramanujan's case. And next, we will talk about the actual work, the creativeness, mentorship, and institutions. For the last aspect of Ramanujan's work, which we'll discuss today, is creativeness. We will talk about mentorship, and legitimacy. Work, Hardy's hand, and creativeness. So basically, how did Hardy's contribution as a mentor for Ramanujan help him achieve his status and his great work? First, between brackets, I would like to quote Ramanujan on something he said on creativeness, because this is a recurring theme that we always mention here. He said that it is not a question of the number of hours one puts in. If a person has talent and passion, that is what matters. So here it is interesting for me to bring this up to say that even though Ramanujan is saying it is not about the number of hours, we always stress the importance of hard work, the importance of putting in the hours. He says it is about talent and passion. So if you do have talent and passion, then usually it is because a number of hours have been put into a certain endeavor, into a certain project. So this is something to keep in mind. Of course, the intensity, the intuitiveness, the passion, the love are very important. But they are important because they help you put in the needed number of hours that are required to make any work great. Okay, so moving on to Hardy, as we said that Hardy was Ramanujan's mentor, and he is an instrumental figure in helping Ramanujan achieve the status that he did. First, as we said, Ramanujan was very intuitive. He was self-educated. He didn't have a formal training in mathematics. And so it would have been very hard for him alone to achieve this status or to publish theories or to be able to get scientific acclaim from the scientific community without getting any help. So Hardy had a great role in this. First, he recognized Ramanujan's talent early on. This was definitely very important. He helped Ramanujan articulate his ideas. And in science, this is something we discuss all the time. Science is partly a social process. You need to be able to express your ideas clearly. And if you don't, there might be excellent ideas, great ideas, groundbreaking ideas, but it just won't work, right? So part of Hardy's role was the formalization of this work so that it can be accepted as genius. It has great originality, but Hardy's inputs led to the development of the work into certain frameworks that got other scientists to continue the work, to acknowledge this development. And so later we see, and this is reflected in the work on partition functions or the Mach theta functions, which had great impact on other fields as well. Recognizing the talent, helping Ramanujan articulate his work, right? Influencing future research, providing support. These are all things that good mentors will do. And of course, giving access to resources and opportunities. This is something I'll mention separately. By bringing Ramanujan to Cambridge, he suddenly has a different level of resources at his disposal to work on math, right? So recognizing the genius, collaboration, formalization, translating these intuitive insights into proofs, right? This was important. As we mentioned, sometimes he would come with something without proof. And this cannot be communicated to a community of scientists. Also, because Ramanujan's work wasn't recognized till a while after his death, Hardy kept work, and he lived till only 32 years of age. So Hardy kept discussing this work, ensuring it was well documented, preserved. He created more awareness around this work, established his reputation, published a number of explanatory works around them. Okay, here a question that we mentioned in the beginning: this extra formalization that is required to communicate results by science, does it lead to a reduction in creativeness? So this creativity of Ramanujan, in other words, can we attribute it to the fact that he wasn't too formalized or too stuck in the iron cage of the scientific institution? Another point to mention here is that Hardy's contribution brought Ramanujan to Cambridge, and this led to acknowledgement. Otherwise, a genius like Ramanujan would have been lost. Right? He came to Trinity College in Cambridge. And here the question is about how cooperating with certain institutions, even if you are a genius, you might not be able to achieve great work without having the right partnerships with the right people. Because these partnerships can bring legitimacy, they can get others to recognize your work. When you work or integrate into a bigger institution, you get more opportunities for cooperation and you have much more resources under your control, right? And so this is an important bit to reflect on here with creativeness and the establishment of great work. The importance of connecting to the figures of authority in the field. And I don't want to make this political, but the structure of the Ramanujan Hardy story has interesting significance, I would say. You have this poor and unpolished person, a romantic with intuitive tendencies and an intuitive grasp of math, and he is helped to reach his destiny. He is helped to become the great genius he is by someone in the center of the world, right? This is a deep truth and something to reflect on. So Hardy becomes an integral part of Ramanujan's story, because if it weren't for Hardy, Ramanujan's genius would have been lost. What do you think about this? So to conclude, a couple of reflections on Ramanujan's story, power of intuition, and the beauty of mathematics. So in his lifetime, which was quite short, Ramanujan couldn't get many to fully appreciate the depth and originality of his work. This is something that happened after a while, through time, as more publications started considering and reflecting on his work. Much of his genius was recognized after his death, when mathematicians spent more time exploring his findings. When we say revolutionary contributions in math, of course, we mean first the conceptual tools of mathematics, which mathematics provides. Yeah, and these include his work on pi, for example, in number theory, in partition functions, mock theta functions. But these conceptual tools, so to speak, later influence and affect other fields. String theory is an example. Number theory is closely related to cryptography, and so on. So these tools that Ramanujan created were discovered later, appreciated later, partly with the work and inputs and additions of Hardy. Here, I would like to add a point on the mystery and the newsworthiness of something. So, Ramanujan is kind of newsworthy, right? And we saw this. There is a film about his life that came out a few years back because of his magnificent, fascinating story. And when you have this kind of a beautiful story, it is newsworthy. People talk about it more, and someone gets acknowledged more, so to speak. Part of the drama was also accentuated when one of his lost notebooks was discovered, I think, in the 1970s, and this brings him to the light. This brings him into more acknowledgement. And this is something we talked about when we talked about Einstein and his iconic character. It is amazing to do all what he did in 32 years, which is a short life. But there are many fascinating and beautiful aspects of his life. It is kind of good that we can create such models and use them to reflect on eternal truths, so to speak, of this world. So remember, the story of Ramanujan has themes of spirituality and knowledge, right? There are themes of perseverance, passion, intensity, dedication, but it also reflects ideas about creativeness and great work that are related to mentorship, institutions. We also talked about intuition and its development, this divine force that can make us see the eternal truth immediately.